Welcome to episode 95 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be finding out about the UK's largest chalet company, probably in brackets, and talking Tania with the expert. Plus, I'll be reporting on my trip to Chamonix last week, as well as talking to the man who skied every single day for a year. Now, firstly, I have to make an apology. If you listened to episode 93 more than a week to 10 days ago, you might have found a little continuity error in there. Really, really annoying. It's now been corrected. There are 146 episodes. I don't think it happens very often. You may know, listener, I'm the researcher, presenter, editor, and publisher. But if you ever happen to hear any mistakes in the podcast, then please do let me know. Secondly, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for their continued support. You may know that they're at the Chelsea Flower Show this week, where they have a Swiss sanctuary, especially designed by Lily Gom, and that is open until this weekend if you want to go along and see some of the amazing flora there. And finally, just before we start, I'd like to congratulate Dave and Mandy Riding, who got married last week after a very long delayed wedding. Probably comes at a close second to his World Cup win earlier this year in the highlights of his life. My name is Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. Firstly, I'm delighted to welcome Diane Palumbo, who is Sales and Marketing Director at Skiworld. Hi, Diane. How are you?
Hi, Iain. Very well and pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We also have Toffa, who is the founder of latania.co.uk. Hi, Toffa. How are you going?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah. Interested to be on this podcast, yeah.
Excellent. And regular guest Al Morgan from skikitinfo.com. How are you going, Al?
I am good, thank you, Iain, and thank you once again.
No worries. Well, let's start. I'm not going to ask Al because we know the answer to that, but let's start by asking my guests when they skied or snowboarded last. Diane, when was that for you?
Alpe d'Huez in March.
Brilliant. That's always good. You know, for so many of these podcasts, we've been asking people when they're last skiing. It was like gaps of 2 years and things like this. And now it's really nice that it's only like a month or two ago. And how was that holiday in Alpe d'Huez?
Deeply enjoyable and satisfying after what's happened to all of us for two reasons. Three. Number one, I went by train, so I felt incredibly virtuous. And there's a long story about our efforts to get more trains for holiday makers, but that would be a separate podcast, I think. Number two, the sheer joy of spending time with family and friends after all we've been through made it even more resonant. And to hear that click of your ski boots into your skis is second. It came first above the sound of my coffee machine. I can't swear on air, but I realised how much I'd fucking well missed it. I honestly, you think you cope with being locked in your home, the stress of work. We had to repatriate thousands of people when it first hit, then the horror that we've all been through, and you cope with not skiing. Come on, guys. It is a pleasure. It's a luxury. We're blessed to be able to do it. That first feeling of the snow under my skis, I realised why I've been so addicted to it all my life, and it's not relented at all.
That is brilliant to hear, and I think we all felt like that when we had that opportunity to get on the slopes again. What about you, Toffa? I'm guessing your last skiing was in Tania, was it?
It wasn't actually. My actual last day of the season was over in Teen. I got invited to the ski lodge in staff day out the day after they closed, or rather the day after they finished cleaning, and we had a coach on up to Teen for the day. Yeah, it's pretty good skiing actually. For about the 20th of April, I think it was. And then we were all back in the coach after some après ski and down to Saint-Maurice for Big Chinese.
Brilliant.
Cracking day out, yeah.
That sounds like a great day out, and I know you got quite a few days in last season, but we'll talk about Tania a little bit more. I was actually out in Chamonix last week. There was snow, but there was no skiing, although I did do a bit of research recently for one of my clients' ski weekend about summer skiing in Chamonix, and they did used to have it. I'm not sure if you know this, up on the Aiguille du Midi, there used to be a few drag lifts up there. There's always enough snow to ski up there. People still ski up there. I mean, I saw people skiing while I was at the Aiguille du Midi, people going ski touring, etc. But it's not a very safe environment in summer when the snow bridges on the glacier get thinner and thinner. And in the end, unfortunately, one of the key decisions that led to them stopping offering summer skiing, which is in the early 90s, I think, was when a snow groomer fell into a crevasse. And at that point, they just decided, no, this isn't really going to work anymore. So there was no skiing there, but I was hiking on the trails. It was exceptionally warm. It was 29 degrees in the resort at 1,000 meters on Saturday, which is super warm. And France is actually on course for its warmest May ever, I believe. But so good to be out there in Chamonix again. You know, I really love Chamonix in the summer, and regular listeners will know actually the last time I was there was when I was taking part in the UTMB, so it was quite special to be back there again. Like you, Diane, I also went there by train there and back. Bit of a complicated journey to get to Chamonix. It involved a couple more changes than normal, but what I really enjoyed about this particular trip was I didn't have to wear a mask at all at any point during the whole journey, and it was such a joy. Made so much difference in that feeling of normality, you know, going skiing and everything like that, but the traveling back and forth and having to do that was just really good. So I had a brilliant time out there, and while I was there, I actually met up with Claire Bernay from the tourist office, who's been on the podcast before. I'll put a link in the show notes to her previous appearance. I'm here with Claire Bernay from the Chamonix tourist office. Hi Claire, how are you going?
Hi Ian, I'm fine, thank you.
Excellent. Well, it's so good to be back in Chamonix again. The last time I was here was for the UTMB, which was an extremely emotional time for me. And in fact, this morning when my run, I came along that little bit to the finish, so it really brought it home. But it's more about kind of trail running here in summer, isn't it? There's a lot going on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chamonix has the sort of nomination of Valley Trail, Trail Runner Valley, and we have a lot of dedicated itineraries for trail runners. So from easy trails to more steep mountain paths, there's something for everybody. So,
yeah. This year, though, I'm planning to do a bit more hiking, let's say, because the lifts or a number of the lifts are still open. You can go. The Aiguille du Midi is one of the most popular lifts in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, the Aiguille du Midi, but the Aiguille du Midi goes up to 12,000 feet, so you're not necessarily going to hike up there unless you're with a high mountain guide. But from the Plan de l'Aiguille, which is the mid station, there's a fabulous trail across to the Montanvert Mer de Glace, which takes about 2 hours, and that's a very popular one. But definitely throughout the valley, the lifts are running, so you can get to all the mountain hiking areas. It means you can get up to an elevation of about 6,000 feet, which helps you set you off on some really exciting trails. And we have 400 kilometres of marked trails in the Chamonix Valley, so there's plenty to be going on with.
Right. Well, I'm going to be trying a few of them, and I noticed during my run this morning, it might be a bit windy today, but you get a lot of paraponters here as well, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Paraponting is a very popular activity, and there are a lot of paraponting schools, so people who want to come try tandem paragliding, it's easy enough to do. In winter as well, as long as the conditions are good, but you need a warm pair of gloves if you do it in winter.
I've done a tandem parapont before, and quite frankly, I found it a bit terrifying. It's not really my sort of thing. You know, as long as I didn't look down, it was fine.
Yeah, you don't need to suffer from vertigo if you're paragliding.
Have you tried it at all?
Yeah, I paraglided. I started paragliding in 1986. That was the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, and since then the whole sport has evolved a lot. When I flew, there were no rules or regulations. A lot of people landing in trees and on cranes and hotel roofs. It was quite an exciting time, but it's much. There are a lot of schools now that are really very committed to mountain safety, and so it's a safer sport. There are very few accidents. It's so nice to be here. When I came out on the train yesterday, for the first time in 2 years, I didn't have to wear a mask, which was great. I feel like we've passed all of that. I wondered at how, as a resort, last winter went for you. Overall, in terms of the international market. Yeah, we had an excellent winter. We still had more French clients than in a normal winter season. Normally we're 50% foreign visitors, 50% French. So the proportion of French visitors was still higher, but the British visitors were back, and we were delighted to hear their voices in the streets of Chamonix for sure. And it was a good season.
It's great to have that international clientele back. You had a really good offer last season as well, which probably made a bit of difference, where you were offering free ski lessons to people if they came in certain dates.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of French school holidays, ski lessons were free, which people couldn't quite believe was true, but it was. As long as you stayed a minimum of 3 nights in the Chamonix Valley, then you could benefit from free ski lessons. So if you were here 3 nights, you could have 3 days of free ski lessons, and that included cross-country skiing, downhill, off-piste skiing, ski touring. So it was a really attractive offer, and I think it did encourage people to choose Chamonix as their holiday destination.
As you know, Claire, I've been coming here for many years, and I'm a huge fan of Chamonix. I'm certainly going to be coming back. I will report on the podcast elsewhere about how my hike and the lifts went, but otherwise thanks very much, and great to see you again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's always great to see you too.
So Chamonix in summer, it's actually one of those few resorts where it's actually busier in summer than it is in winter. So many people come to go on Montanvert and go up the Aiguille du Midi. I actually worked there in the summer in 1996. When I was rep for Crystal Holidays, and you'd hear in the background, lots of people going, "Oh yeah, I went up Mont Blanc today," which means they went up the Aiguille du Midi. Got quite close to Mont Blanc, but people do go, up Mont Blanc, etc. Al, you mentioned you've been out to Chamonix in the summer a few times before.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It's such a hub of activity. So if you're going to go out and go climbing, or I've walked around Mont Blanc a few times through Italy and Switzerland. I absolutely love it in the summer. I've been there more in the summer than I have in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I have been there more in the summer because I've done a lot of trail running over there as well. And mountaineering, you mentioned. I mean, when you go to the Aiguille du Midi, and listener, if you've never been, it costs quite a lot of money to get up there, but I highly recommend it. And you could easily spend 2 hours or more up there, I think, taking in all the different views and watching people. When I went through the ice tunnel that takes you to the arête to go down to the Vallée Blanche, where people ski the Vallée Blanche. And when I got there was a photo shoot going on. And there was some guy who was just looking like he was about to ski down the north face down towards Chamonix. And I asked who he was, and I looked it up, and he's a free skier called Vivian Bruchez. You ever heard of him? Well, I Googled him, and he's a pretty amazing guy, and he was doing a photo shoot. There were other people who were ski touring, other people who were, doing mountaineering. It's incredibly active there. Diane, I think you told me in the green room you've been there before, but a few years back.
Oh, God, yeah. Probably the glacier is a lot bigger. That's how long ago it was the last time I went. And it was a previous job, and I was repping a group. And I was astounded at the summer beauty of the mountains, having only ever experienced mountains in the winter. And there's a few places where I'm kind of thinking years to come I will hit in the summer, and I think Chamonix has to be one of them, because you're right, it's so vibrant. Well,
I love the mountains in the summer, as I do in winter as well, and there is so much that you can do there. But Chamonix is quite an exciting place, and even though I was there in May, when it is really quite quiet in the town, quite a lot of the shops weren't open. Some of the restaurants and bars weren't open either. But it's still relatively busy. If you go there in August when the UTMB is on, it is really, really, truly busy. And that is one of the things they have to deal with. Toffer, I think you said when you've been to Chamonix in summer, it's been to maybe just a drive through it to get through to Switzerland, perhaps? Or
I know the first time I ever went to the Alpes, I think it was in 99 in the summer. And I was actually looking at buying an apartment. And I wasn't really decided if I was going to buy one, but there was some I was going to have a look at. I just remember that drive up in the mountains in the morning. It was a beautiful morning, and there'd been a bit of fresh snow on the summit, and that was it. I was buying an apartment. It was just going to be which one, And it really, really changed the whole world for me, being out in the summer,
Yeah, I mean, Chamonix is so dramatic because at 1,000 meters, the town, not really a village, and then going up to 3,800 on an incredibly steep incline to the Aiguille du Midi, and on the other side to Brevon. And it's a very different perspective that you don't get in most of the other French ski resorts. So, listener, I posted a few videos on the Skipedia YouTube channel. If you'd like to find out a little bit more, you can have a look there. Now, Diane, I'd like to turn to you, if that's okay. You are Sales and Marketing Director at Skiworld. There have been a lot of changes in the world of chalet holidays in recent years, and in the time that you've been there. I think that Skiworld is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Is that correct?
Yes, I've just signed off the logo. Every 10 years you signed off a celebratory logo, but correct. Yeah.
Well, 40 years in business is a tremendous achievement, particularly through all the challenges that the travel industry has had. And I have a feeling, I'm not 100% sure of this because it involves even more research than my researcher has time for. I think probably Skiworld is the largest chalet company in the UK now, with, Crystal Holidays and Ingham scaling back massively. When did you join the company?
2000. No, I'm lying. It was 1999. Because in 1999, we were making preparations for, this is going to be for older listeners, the millennium bug.
So that is quite a long time ago. You've been with the company a long time. In all of that time, they've been, I mentioned the amount of challenges, and lots of travel companies have not made it over that length of time. More recent challenges, there have been so many of them. In the early years, it's really a matter of the two variables, I guess, that you don't have any control over: the snow and the exchange rate. That is something that, chalet companies and travel companies have to deal with the whole time. I mean, there must have been some occasions where there were some massive variations there that caused you difficulties.
Yes, but now looking back on them, they kind of feel like the normal things that you deal with when running a business, whether it be small, SME or large. So I think we've always taken a very financially prudent approach. And when we have made money, because you're faced sometimes with crises and you have to repatriate people, you've got to have reserves in place. And then it became more sensible to use money that we did make to buy our own offices to give us an atoll stability. And the final thing was to kind of invest in an IT infrastructure. Actually, I'm saying resources because your IT infrastructure is worthless if you haven't got the skilled teams to use it. So I think even exchange rate and variable snow, those measures really help.
Being prudent sounds like a very good way of approaching these things. I think I've seen a lot of companies just try to expand far too quickly and overcommit themselves over the time. But those are sort of challenges that are kind of out of your control, but seem reasonable, perhaps. Perhaps the biggest challenge in most recent years has been Brexit. And I know that you're very involved in an organisation called Seasonal Businesses in Travel. And we've previously had Charlie Owen talking about that on the show. How do you want to explain a little bit more about SBIT and your role in it?
It started with obviously the result of the referendum in 2016, where what we felt was really the value of frictionless movement of people and resources hadn't had enough emphasis during that period. And what we could see ahead was things like us buying our uniform in the UK, which in the early days we were trying to always buy from a UK-based manufacturer. We then had to buy from a UK-based retailer who had it made in the Far East, but it was still money coming from the UK. It cost us nothing to put that on one of our vans over to our staff, and we could quality control. We could see all of that disappearing, let alone the big one of myself, the MD, the entire management team of Skiworld are graduates of seasonal work. You've been at the coalface. And also, doing a season made us addicted skiers for the rest of our lives. Example, how we opened this conversation. So the loss of all of that precipitated a lot of competitors coming together around a table and saying, unless we speak with one voice, we're really not going to be able to get the information to government about the size of our contribution to the economy and what damage that could do. And that was the bit that was absent, that ABTA does produce figures that tells us that £39 billion is spent in the UK prior to international travel. That figure dates from 2019. That had been growing consistently from the previous 10 years. And that's expenditure in the UK that goes into the exchequer. But nobody had sectioned off the winter sports industry to say, you know, we probably contribute about 1.9 billion collectively to the exchequer.
That is a huge amount of money, and that I am aware that part of the lobbying of ESPET has been trying to make the government and aware of the value of the industry. It's interesting that the different elements of it, talking about the amount of revenue generated for UK businesses, but it's that, for me, what you mentioned there, the unquantifiable aspect of it, of the experience and enthusiasm. If you talk about travel industry, the directors at Skiworld had done ski seasons. I did a ski season, and I could go on to list a huge number of people who've worked ski seasons, who have ended up creating businesses and are working in senior positions within the travel industry, who've built up that experience from working, in the first case, dealing with customers face to face and understanding what customers need, and then being able to apply that to create a product that they are then going to want after all. I'm not entirely persuaded necessarily that people doing ski seasons contribute to the overall growth of the ski industry, because it feels like the numbers are relatively small compared to the numbers of overall skiers. But, you know, the work that ESPET has been doing, I like the idea of competitors coming together. You've put a value on what the cost of or the value of the industry is. But what other work have you been doing then to try and smooth the path for ski companies to continue in Europe?
Well, interestingly, and I hear what you're saying about the seasonaires, but we did a piece of research a few years ago, and at our peak, we were employing 460 young people aged between sort of 18 and 25. Interestingly, the average age had been going up. And more than 1 year, several years, men outnumber women. 57% of our chalet hosts were men. And it was hovering around that for quite a few years. We did a piece of research a few years afterwards to try and find out how many of them actually were introduced to skiing from their ski seasons and continued to ski. The figure was something in the 30%. So those were people who'd never skied before, who decided to do a ski season and then said, I keep going regularly. That's different from the people who, by the age of 18, had already been skiing and were going to kind of carry on doing it. So we still keep having it, and I can track it. Customers who book with us, who've done a season with us, are entitled to a special discount. And of course, I can find that on the reservation system. So we can see every year how many people come back with us. Anyway, back to your question. The other piece of work we've been doing is working very, very more closely than I could have ever envisaged with authorities in Paris, Avignon, Savoie, Haute-Savoie, Isère, to obtain a smooth system, as smooth as it can be, of getting work visas. It is still onerous, complex, exhausting, can be refused, but I would never have envisaged the level of cooperation that we've had from our partners in France.
So just to clarify then, I mean, the immediate impression upon Brexit was that freedom of movement was going to end. And if you were British, you were no longer going to be able to do a ski season, because I think initially there was a limit of 90 days or something like that for a working visa.
There is.
But you've found a solution that allows you to employ staff for the whole season?
No. That what you've just said is correct. We have, fact, the sky is blue, trees are green. We have lost the right to work in France and to stay any longer working than 90 days. So we have to go through an application process, which involves having a French company. The French company is the employer. So these staff are on a French payroll. All of those staff's social contributions now go to France and not the UK. We have to apply for a work permit and prove that that task cannot be undertaken by a French person. Then we're issued with a work permit, at which point we have to obtain a long stay visa. The passport has to be stamped. There has to be a medical. And if you go past that or try and do several years, you need another piece of documentation.
It's very easy, I think, for everybody to understand listening to that. It's a lot more complicated. There are evidently costs. Working within the ski industry, and I've worked for different tour operators, I'm aware that the margins are quite low. So this must be squeezing the margins even more. And obviously, it's one of the reasons why there are fewer chalet staff in the Alps. I mean, have prices of holidays gone up to compensate for that?
Yes. We predicted it in all the publications and the lobbying we said to government. And we said two things are going to happen. And this was before COVID. We said holiday costs will increase, which will shrink the market because margins are already pretty wafer thin, actually. And secondly, it's going to restrict supply because not all people are going to undertake all of that. And certainly any companies that employ staff illegally risk that member of staff being banned for Europe for life. Is that really a risk that you want to take with the young person that you're employing? I think it's a real dereliction of duty if you do that, let alone the directors being fined. So we said it's going to restrict supply. Well, economics tells us that a restriction in supply also puts prices up. And that is going to restrict the contribution of the UK holiday industry, and certainly this sector, to the UK economy. So find a way of instigating a youth visa, a youth mobility visa.
And that's what you're continuing to lobby for, because we obviously do have various areas within freedom of movement where, for example, the UK are allowing a certain number of people to come in to do fruit picking, for example, I think is one of them where we have a shortage in the UK. We've always relied on people from the EU and therefore those restrictions don't apply. Do you think there's any feasibility that that might apply in reverse for young British people to go and work in ski resorts?
Well, even for fruit pickers, those documentations and that paperwork still has to be gone through. And all the government is saying is we're going to allow a larger number in. And the same is true in Austria. And in France, they've been incredibly cooperative and done something the British government has not done, which they have not put a limit. They've said it's on the basis of application. Whereas in Austria, which is why our program in Austria was literally decimated, there was a limit to the number of visas, which is done on a regional level.
Has it changed your attitude towards recruitment? Because back in the day when I was doing natives, we did lots of recruitment for different tour operators, and obviously we were mainly focusing on British people. But if you can employ people with an EU passport, then it's going to make it a lot more straightforward. Have you tried to target people from Ireland, for example, or the Nordic nations?
Yes, of course. As an employer, I've got very split feelings. As you said, all of us are graduates of the School of Seas and Airs. And I feel so strongly about giving the opportunities to travel and work abroad to young British people, the opportunities that we all benefited from. I get emotional when I think about that restriction, the effect on the opportunities for young people. But I also have to look at what is good for the business and keeps holiday prices the best value we can. And that has meant employing and prioritising people with an EU passport.
Certainly when I spoke to my kids and I said to them after Brexit, one of the biggest influences or one of the biggest issues here is that it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to do a ski season, which they both would like to do. Then that kind of helped, it's a few years ago and they're a bit younger, but helped them to understand the significance of that decision. I hope your situation at Skiworld continues to progress and the work that you do with ESPET, hopefully there's some continued progress there and we're able to maintain the chalet holiday because, I'm not going to defend the chalet holiday at all costs, but it certainly is a British tradition. I know there are other countries, some countries, Dutch offer it as well. But I think the chalet holiday really is part of skiing's history. And I love the social aspects to it when you get a mixed group, but also when you have a full group. When I go on holiday with our groups, we've been staying in apartments recently with several different families. So you're sort of on holiday together, but you're still apart. If you can be all on holiday in the same place, then it is so much better, I think.
I agree. And one of the hysterical things is a very close friend of mine is French and lives in Paris. And she often says, I do not understand. You British, you go on holiday in groups. You go all together and then you play. We do not do this in France. I sound more Italian because I've just spent time with my family. But anyway, that it's a phenomena that is really, it's a British characteristic. We go on holiday in groups to play.
Long may it continue, is what I say. Thank you very much, Diane, for that insight, and wish you all the best for your 40th celebrations. Look forward to seeing that logo in due course. Now, I'm going to move on to you, Toffa, just now. Interestingly, 1999 was clearly a very significant year for the ski industry. Diane joined Skiworld. I started Natives around that time. And Toffa, I think that was the year that you started latania.co.uk as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I was out for that season, yeah. I hardly had a day off the previous year because of a millennium bug, because I worked in the IT industry. But I first got to Tania in the mid-90s on one of those crystal super deals where you don't find out where you're actually staying until you get on the coach.
Brilliant.
And I remember I was on the coach, and you were promised it was going to be one of the big ski areas. And they said, oh, you're staying with Tania. And then randomly, I think I went on a chalet holiday, and right until the day before, I thought we were going to Mirabel. And then we were driving out, and we got the address, and of course it was Latania again. And then so it was just sort of almost fate that I ended up sort of falling in love with Latania and going there regularly. And as I say, I was out for that season in '99, and I had flu between Christmas and New Year, and ended up just messing about with the website, and we sort of created it overnight, really.
That sounds very casual. I think you're being very modest there, because I don't think anyone ever creates a website overnight. I mean, I know you work in IT, but there's a big difference between being a fan of a resort and going there. I mean, what led you to decide, oh, well, I think there should be a website, or I'm going to create a website?
I think it was weird because we're doing some projects at work, and so we sort of had access to the internet. You know, I mean, it was all dial-up modems then, and of course, it was before any social media, so just taking photos of people and being able to put them on the internet, and people could see them and go, wow, this is great. And it became sort of message board as well. So it was, as I say, before any social media, it was a way of everybody keeping in contact, and especially after the ski season as well, where so many seasonaires seemed to end up in London. It just became a sort of place where everyone could meet up, you know.
And it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you're right that it's hard. Some listeners, as Diane mentioned before, might find it difficult to imagine an era before social media. You know, the internet was very nascent then. I think you had a real first mover advantage there, because you set up that website possibly before ever there was an official website for Latania. Because if you Google Latania, it's going to be very easy for listeners to find latania.co.uk, because it comes out top in almost every single search for Latania. Did the tourist office have their own website at the time?
They did, but it was a real sort of static site. Really, didn't really update at all. It was just sort of the general information site with the brochures on, because that was latania.com. But interestingly, in the last few years, there's been this merger with Courchevel, and so latania.com just takes you to the Courchevel website. I guess it's a lot flashier than latania.co.uk. It's cleverer and graphics and all that, but the information tends to be for the whole season rather than being constantly updated, and you know, our stupid snow reports and videos and just what's on locally in the small bars and restaurants and things.
Yeah, I wouldn't underrate your stupid snow reports. The video snow reports that feature Tim Wall, who anyone who's ever been to the ski lodge in Latania will know. He's a natural in front of the camera, and those snow reports are really good. But just back to Latania. I mean, was there ever a point where they said to you, oh, well, would you mind, not doing that website or getting off that domain or anything like that? Did you always have cordial relations with the official resort?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always been that small tourist office in Latania, and yeah, we've got an excellent relationship with them. And in actual fact, even now as part of Courchevel, it's probably actually closer because they don't have the influence on the main Courchevel site, so they publish things on latania.co.uk to get out there, you know.
And what's your view on that then? Is Latania part of Courchevel? Would you ever accept that, or are you more like a sort of Basque Catalan separatist?
That's a good comparison, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's really hard to judge, really. I mean, there has been a lot of investment in the beginners infrastructure, 2 new lifts, and obviously the World Cup is just above Latania, you know. The new piece down to La Prat, so all that area. So there is money coming in, but it does sometimes feel like we are the sort of poor relation, you know. I mean, I think you'll remember the old hotel Telemark. That is just staff accommodation for one hotel in 1850, which is just incredible to think. A hotel that wasn't Tania is just staff accommodation, you know.
That is amazing. There have been so many changes over the years since you've been involved since '99. I mean, in fact, Diane, I might bring you back in at this point. You know, I remember when I was working seasons and also when we were doing natives and doing parties, you know, in Courchevel 1850. There used to be so many staff. I mean, I think there were 3 Skiworld club hotels in Courchevel 1850. And I think now they've all been converted to upmarket restaurants or hotels or something like that.
Yeah, we used to have a bar, which, funny enough, one night Roman Abramovich, dirty name these days, called to say how much money did we want for him to have the bar to himself for the whole evening because there was a Chelsea match on. And I thought very rapidly, and the only figure I could remember was the total turnover of the bar for a year. And I gave it to him, and he said yes on the spot.
Wow, that is amazing.
It was a very small bar, though. It was like a narrow corridor with
a
mural painted on the wall, and it was a kind of Seasonaires bar.
Was that the Isba?
No, it was actually off the Auberge Ensoleillé, which was next to the Isba bar, one building in between. Well remembered.
Wow.
Well, you know, I did actually work a season in Courchevel, and you know, at that time, one of our après activities that we offered to guests was a pub crawl in Courchevel 1850. And you know, unless you've got very, very deep pockets, there's absolutely no way that you could do that now. We used to be able to go from one bar to the other within a couple of 100 meters of each other. And
thank you for your custom, Iain.
As you say, Toffa, you know, now there's very few, you know, we often have Alex Irwin from 150 Days of Winter on the podcast. You know, the situation from when he was first there and from you were first doing it in Courchevel 1850 to now is such that, as you're telling me, I didn't even realise that the Telemark is now just staff accommodation and all the staff have moved down. But it's interesting in Latania, it always has struck me, a real community there that makes it special, perhaps because of the compressed nature of the resort. It's all focused around that little kind of snowfront area where there's, you know, a few bars, and the ski lodge for British people, you know, really is such a focus, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. It was always about the right size, really. Although it has expanded in recent times, but mainly just chalets rather than sort of apartment blocks. So there's always been a number of people where you know, there's sort of a core group, and there's so many Seasonaires to do season after season, you know, that it keeps a continuity going of people and friends. And I think one of the things you mentioned about the Seasonaires, that sort of culture, you know, those friends from that first season, I'm still massively in touch with, you know. And it really is a thing about, you know, you do a season, but you keep those friends for the rest of your life, if you want to or not nowadays.
No, well, that also relates to what Diane was saying. I think, you know, something that you get out of doing seasons is that incredibly close connection that you get with people when you spend that really intense period of time. And I know that you are not working in IT anymore, I don't think, Toffa. How many days do you think you spent in Latania this winter?
It better be less than 90.
89 days in Courchevel this winter, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I mean, that's you know, going on about that. Quite a few of the older ski bums, they ended up getting the longer stay visas, so they can stay 90 days in France and not affect the rest of the summer holidays in the Schengen area, which is quite interesting. And the first people who did it back sort of October, November sort of struggled a bit. Quite a few of the Scots guys in Edinburgh did it because there was an office in Edinburgh where you could process it, and it sort of became a bit easier during the next few months.
That's also good to hear that there's always some fixes. Got one more question for you. You know, you're so well connected and so well informed about Latania, and you're always constantly updating the blog. You know, do you have friends who work for the Mairie? How do you get your source of information?
I think it's just generally, you know, a lot of the chalet companies just pick up information, or Tim's on the sort of the council committees and goes to a lot of the planning meetings with the tourist office to get quite a bit of information from him. I think it's just sometimes, you know, for instance, I think one of the chalet companies got the Three Valleys lift prices yesterday. So that And so immediately I was like, oh, great, that's like, next bit of news I need to put up there. But, it's nowhere online yet, except on latania.co.uk, I think.
Yeah, well, constant exclusives. That's what you're going to get on latania.co.uk. I'll put a link in the show notes, but as I say, you search for Latania and you'll come across it. That's brilliant, Toffa. Thanks very much for sharing that with us. Right, I'm just going to drop in a short interview now that I did with Arnie Wilson. I'm pretty sure most people on the panel, and certainly a lot of our listeners, will know Arnie. He's a very well-respected veteran ski journalist who's been working in the industry for many years, and he is such an interesting and knowledgeable man. He is best known for his exploits in 1994 when he skied every day for a year, and that was written up in the book Ski the World, which featured in Ski Book Group back in episode 20. I had the opportunity to talk to him recently. I'm going to publish the full interview as a bonus episode next week, but here's a couple of snippets of our chat now. You started off your career before you became a ski journalist as more of a broader journalist, a more traditional journalist working in the industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I worked in Fleet Street interviewing celebrities. Skiing didn't come into it really at all. Although later on, of course, when I was in the skiing industry, I did meet. I had lunch with Clint Eastwood, skied with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about those. But in those early celebrities, and who were you interviewing then?
Oh gosh, 200. Famous people, and in those days, I don't want to brag, but they really were famous. I had breakfast with Buzz Aldrin.
Wow.
Wonderful guy. So many of them, I'd have to refer to a list. Lunch with David Bowie.
Wow. A lot of people would be extremely envious of you for that. These are writing profiles or features for different newspapers, was it?
They could even be little scrappy bits. I mean, after the round the world trip, because I'd had lunch with Clint Eastwood en route, he very sweetly, as you can see on the front of the cover, agreed to write the intro. Of course, makes it much more interesting to people and more bona fide. And what was quite funny about that was I said, could you send us your signature? And he popped his signature in a box, put the box in a larger box, put the larger box in a parcel. So when it arrived, it was triple wrapped, and that's the signature in the book.
And what about the actual Ski the World, the round the world ski expedition then? Did you pitch that to the Financial Times? Did you say to them, oh, this will be a really good idea?
Well, I'd already been writing for them for 10 years or so, roughly that.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to do something different, even if you're not interested. I think what it was, I wrote a magazine article. Could you ski somewhere every month of the year?
Okay.
Thought, so I made half of it up because I knew you could, but I never had. And then I thought, well, hang on a sec. I've just proved that you can ski every month of the year, so why not every day?
So on a day, for example, when you were about to fly from Chile to New Zealand, you were up really early in the morning skiing somewhere else. And I think from my memory of the book, wasn't there one day where you kind of pulled over to the side of the road to find like a patch of snow just to get some skiing in?
We were skiing along the pavement in parts of Chile. It happened that we were in Chile when there was nowhere else to ski.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
I forget. Must have been when the resorts were closing.
Yeah, I think August is, I've got down here, July, August you were in Chile.
So we were, in order to produce 1 or 2 or 3 miles a day, we would ski down Mountain Pass and we'd ski on the pavement because it's still snow.
Yeah, of course, It's still skiing, isn't it? Exactly. Mammoth was almost your kind of hub, wasn't it, for the trip?
That's quite an important point. Mammoth was a terrifically useful place to ski in between the northern and southern hemisphere. We became friendly with the people in Mammoth. They would take us, for example, in Mammoth, it was our link between, as I say, between the States, between Europe and the southern hemisphere. And so I remember certainly that in Mammoth they allowed us up the mountain during the night. Because we had a flight the next morning from Los Angeles, was that Billy? Yeah, Los Angeles, at about 9:30. And so the only way we could catch that would be to ski at 6 in the morning. Do one run, maybe, and then we'd go to the airport. So yes, we had, but Mammoth did become very important to us as a great sort of link between the two hemispheres. We were asked to go to India. The Indian government. We were
That's brilliant.
Well, it could have been a disaster because if we'd failed one day.
Yes.
Well, chancing our luck in India, it would have ruined the whole year. We thought, do we say yes or no? But anyway, they asked us, and we went to Manali. in the Himalayas.
Yeah, I've been there actually,
Have you
Manali.
really?
Yeah.
Did you ever ski there?
No.
Well, there's heli skiing there, which is probably the best heli skiing in the world, which I've done since the trip. Done 2 or 3 trips there. But Manali was a bit of a... we just about managed, because the thing is there were no ski resorts open. We discovered when we got there. So what we did, we got a special government permit, and we drove with help from the local, I don't know, tourist office, I suppose, up the pass, and then we skied down all kinds of weird. It wasn't a ski resort at all. We were skiing down. It wasn't that dangerous, but it was sort of loose snow, ice, rivers, and then of course then when we skied down, we had to try and find our driver again. I've got some pictures at home of getting into the area, great big cliffs and walls of ice, and you think, God, what are you doing there? You know? It seemed like it might have been a mistake, but we managed to ski every day. But we skied so little in India that we ended up owing the total, if you like, another 30 or 40
I see,
miles.
and you had to catch up.
To make up. We were sitting like we are here at the table, and he was at the next table. And I'd actually said, wouldn't it be fun if we met Clint? And there he was. So we moved. He seemed to be quite welcoming. We said what we were doing, and we moved across to his table and had lunch with him. And
Brilliant.
He was very nice.
Great. So I'm going to move on to Al now. Now, you were out in Kutai on the ski test, I think back in March, wasn't it? And in the green room, and part of our conversations early, you told me that you'd like to expand a little bit on a couple of pairs of skis that really stood out for you. And I think the first one you mentioned was is it the Volcal Deacon? Is that what it is? Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so you know what it is? You go to these things, you go to ski tests and you get on loads of different products. They're really privileged position. It's fantastic. But certain bits of kit just gets you really frothing, really excited about just skiing. Like Diane said before, just the excitement for being on the snow and certain bits of kit just light you up. And this ski, it's a completely new ski for winter 2022-23. It's called the Volcal Deacon 72. Now, just going back a bit, probably to about 2008, Volcal brought out a ski called the Code, and it was a pure performance piste ski, but it had a rocker front and back, quite revolutionary at the time. Now, they have a whole family of Deacon skis for piste skiing and for all mountain. And the winter we've just had, they had a ski called the Master 72. But for next year, they're bringing out the Volcal Deacon 72. Loads of numbers and names there. But this is a pretty special ski. It's quite expensive, £840, but it's got loads of modern tech in it. You do get a pretty nice binding in that. But yes, we appreciate that is the upper end. But it makes you way more than £800 a better ski. It is phenomenal.
If I buy the ski for £840, it's going to make me more than £800 better as a skier.
Honestly, it is just incredible. It's a bit like they've got alchemists working at Volcal and they just turn something magical in this ski. It's brilliant. So it's a multi-layer wood core, poplar and ash, quite a long lift front and back. It's quite a low rocker, but quite long. Big beefy sidewall, 2 layers of metal, and they've got 3D glass. So in skis, you have different flat layers, laminates, but they get more technical with this in that the glass laminate in the ski isn't just a flat layer. It comes up in a 3D profile, up and out over the edges in the tip and tail, and then combine that with their new tech, this tailored carbon tip. So they have certain carbon strands that they embroider onto a mesh back, and that's laminated in the tip of the ski. And the grip out of this is phenomenal. You know, I'm really lucky. I get to ski race skis and all sorts of stuff. There was a really hard packed piste, and I was trying to go really fast on a number of different piste skis. And I put this on my feet, and my word, it was electric. You just want to go faster and harder, and you weren't in any doubt that it was going to lose grip there. And it was really interesting. So there's a lady called Anja Blenninger, who's an ex-German racer. She's Volcal's international product manager. She was out there, and I was talking to her about the ski afterwards. And it's just really amazing watching somebody that works in it getting so excited about a product. It is just brilliant. And even people from different brands, other ski brands, got in on this ski and were blown away. It's awesome.
I don't think I've ever heard a more positive review of a ski than that. I'm definitely going to have to look out for it. I think you listeners probably know I don't own skis, but I tend to hire them from Intersport. I'll have to mention to Intersport to make sure they get that in their quiver for next winter. And then the other one was a Salomon ski, right?
Yeah, this is. I'm not going to try and get too over the top because these are just that Volcal Deacon 72 and this Salomon QST are just electric skis. It's a very different product. It's wider. It's 106 underfoot. So just setting the scene a little bit. QST range from Salomon has been in their offering for a number of years. Great product. They brought out a kind of updated or new construction in a model called the QST Blank, as well as a QST 98. It used to be the 99 for the season we've just had. But the updated this 106. It's an unchanged name, but this ski has changed for next winter. So the contact point in the shovel of the ski is brought further back. They put more cork in the ski. They use something called CFX fiber in the ski, so for dampening without chucking loads of metal in the ski, so it keeps it really light. And I'm going to wax lyrical about it again. This is just a fantastic, if you want an all-mountain free ride style ski for somebody who's maybe an advanced to expert level skier, got a decent amount of technique, it is just brilliant. The grip on piece, they have this kind of double sidewall construction underfoot. They call it dual sidewall, where they've got more sidewall bonded into the core of the ski. And the grip on firm snow, it was a real surprise for something that's over 100 mil underfoot. Obviously, it's got a slightly longer turn radius on this. It's got a 21 meter turn radius, so you're skiing it in the 181 length, but you can get it over on its edge. You can put pressure into it. The real beauty in this ski is just its versatility. It's been a long time since we've got on something this wide that can cope with such a variety of conditions in skiing. So if you want a wider ski, but you don't want to sacrifice that firm snow performance, you might want to do some tighter turns, you might want to ski at really high speed, the QST 106 is just superb.
Cool. Well, those are two really effusive reviews there. Thanks for that, Al. And I think it's quite good. We've got these exclusives here because these will all come out in the magazines in the autumn. But listener, you now know the Volcal Deacon 72 and the Salomon QST 106, two of the standout skis from the ski test in Kutai back in March. Excellent. Well, we're moving towards the close now. Now, I enjoy all feedback about the show, even if it is about some error. So please let me know about that. Leave your reviews and comments wherever it works for you. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, social media, email. Alex Crump, he said he really enjoyed listening to the Mayor of Dessau and his plan for a green future. I think it was 2 episodes ago. Mark Thommason, he saw my UTMB cap when I was out in Chamonix last week. So good spot there, Mark. Thanks very much. Don't forget, there are 146 episodes of the Ski Podcast to catch up on. We had 93 of them listened to in the last 7 days. So lots of people are going through the back catalogue. I've also got a whole load more of stickers in stock. So if you would like a set of Ski Podcast stickers, then just contact me, theskipodcast@gmail.com. Now, you can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. But for now, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for supporting the show and thank my guest today, Diane.
Pleasure. Lovely seeing you, Iain. Can't wait for the next one.
Excellent. Toffer.
Yes, thank you very much, Iain.
And Al.
Iain, always a pleasure. Thank you.
And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye. Hi there, listener. This is Iain here, and this is a request for your feedback all about the Ski Podcast. I'd like you to tell us what you like, what you don't like about the podcast. It's very easy and simple to let me know. Just go along to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/the Ski Podcast survey. It'll take you a couple of minutes to complete the form at the very most, and you could win some prizes. I've got some goggles very kindly donated by Atomic, and I've got some other freebies such as beanies from Les Deux Alpes and Val d'Isère and Visit Tyrol. and lots of other bits and pieces that I'm going to give out in a random draw for everybody who completes the survey. So if you could complete the survey, that's great. Remember, the address again is bit.ly/the Ski Podcast Survey. And if you're not too sure about that, just have a look at us on social media and you'll be able to see a link to it there. Thanks very much. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say about the show.